Okay, hey, welcome to another episode of On Point EDC. Today we have a cool review for you from the brand Tactile Knife Company. Now, why that might sound a little bit familiar is because I'm sure you've heard of Tactile Turn. They make machined pens, and I have them in view here just for kind of visual reference as well as size reference. Now, Tactile Knife Company was founded, of course, by the same Will Hodges of Tactile Turn machine pens. They are USA based, and they have hand machined and assembled pens that are done also in Texas. Now, some key common characteristics and design language when you're looking for something in terms of an everyday carry folding utility knife. Of course, you're going to want a pocketable size as well as a versatile blade shape. Now, this model in particular is known as their Rockwall. I have one of the earlier editions because, yeah, I got in line for this thing when I found out it was going to be available, and I finally now have had a minute to make a review for you guys. Now, the Rockwall is an American-made pocket knife commensurate with the quality we've come to expect from Tactile Turn machine pens. This knife can be purchased for $2.99 direct from Tactile Turn Knife Company. Now, it is pretty sweet, and I'm not sure how the prices have been fluctuating since I purchased way back when, but I'm really happy to kind of get this piece in hand and show you guys some of the really special features about it. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this in hand, and take a closer look. Okay guys, now before we pick this up, really quick customary wristwatch check today. On the wrist, we do have the Helios Universa. I figured it would be a nice pairing because, well, much like Tactile Knife Company, Helios is also pretty tough to get your hands on in terms of the fact that they're just in high demand. So not the most, out of the box kind of add to cart type of process for purchasing this one, but similar here, but good things are kind of worth the wait and the perseverance to kind of jump on them, and are typically very feature rich. And when you think about the fact that this is an American made piece for about $300, I think that is pretty outstanding. Now, in terms of the pens here that we have, just for kind of quick highlight, you can see here we have the slim bolt action, the latest iteration, very nice, great signature bolt action, as well as their side clicker, which is in the more traditional kind of dimensions, being a bit thicker, but I think that's part of what makes these pens feel so great to a certain extent. Although I do like the thinness here, I will say that the thickness also does add just an extra bit of premium feel. And so many people ask this in all these videos, hey, is that going to be slippery for my sweaty hands? No, this will not be slippery. These ridges here it's not like brushing you'd find on a watch. I mean, these are actual, deep cuts in there. So it's if anything too grippy at times. I don't think there should be anybody that's worried about this being slippery by any means, but cool mechanism. So they have other ways to deploy outstanding pens, and but they moved on to knives, guys, and this is for all intents and purposes, it's a very simple layout, and it's really nothing fancy, but it is quite good. I mean, good is probably a bit of an understatement considering how much I carry this knife. It's actually really great. The blade is XHP tool steel. It has this nice kind of drop point, clip point style blade, very clean. It's flat ground, stone washed finish. It's quite sharp out of box, and it does have a nice little sharpening choil, as you can see here, for those of you that do like to sharpen your own knives. Now, the action on it is quite nice as well, as you'll see here. Very nice, very responsive. you don't have to be good with a knife to be able to deploy this, which is great. Has useful jimping right where you need it. And it can be held in a number of different positions, whether it be for more EDC style tasks, or or other, whether it be something very basic. So very nice from that standpoint. Great fit and finish, guys. Look at the machining here, obviously very reminiscent. But you'll see here it's even done to a larger scale in terms of how wide the grooves are, which do help with even more purchase, which is very nice. In terms of size, this thing is great as well. Actually, one other thing to mention before I get into kind of the size, which did fly across the screen there earlier. One thing to note is that this does have a deep carry pocket clip. It's been semi-controversial for this one in terms of people's thoughts on it. It works for me. I will say that it would have been nice if they would have had a little bit more up ramp there in terms of getting this put on. I mean, taking it out and retrieving is fine, but putting it on, sometimes you do have to be a little bit more purposeful with the way that you're guiding it into your pocket, depending on the materials of your pants or shorts. But it is, of course, a stainless steel deep carry pocket clip, and then we do also have a stainless steel back spacer, as well as a stainless steel lock insert there. And then in terms of the dimensions, the overall length is 7 inches, which is about perfect. The blade length is about 2.84. Close length about 4 inches there, so about 4, about 3, comes out to about 7. So really nice from that standpoint. The weight on here is only 2.5 ounces, so not like super lightweight. It still does feel quite substantial in the hand, but obviously not overweight by any means. I mean, it's probably about the right weight. I pretty much try to shoot for, hey, if the blade's around 3 inches, maybe this thing will be around 3 ounces, is kind of my thought process. And it doesn't always work out, but as long as I'm kind of within that range, I find that it makes it pretty comfortable for EDC. And then you can see in terms of balance there, I'm trying to do it with the camera in front of me. Yeah, it's pretty nice balancing point there. A little heavier towards the back. So I'd say the balance point is closer to the bottom of the notch versus the middle of the notch per se. So I think ideally you'd probably want it to be more balanced here, but you can see it's a little bit more handle heavy, just because that's kind of the nature of the beast, which I'd rather be a little bit handle heavy versus a little bit blade heavy when it comes to my balancing points. So really nice from that standpoint. Again, great ergonomics. Everything really locks in hand. Wow, it's that stick-like style, which is nice. It's not overly contoured or anything like that, which makes it very natural for your hand to kind of find its comfort spot there. But it doesn't feel overly thin, which is nice. And then of course this action is very smooth and snappy. You do have a ceramic ball pivot bearings there, which is great. It has a nice detent, which also has a ceramic ball bearing there as well. Very snappy geometry in terms of the flipper. In pocket, it's going to lay very flat, very unobtrusive, very compact from that standpoint. The clip is very tight, and then that lack of ramp again makes loading a little bit tough though. So that's the one drawback I'll give it. But in terms of deploying, really great to pull out. But yeah, that kind of lack of ramp, and then of course because of how tight this is and then how much grip there is there, it is something to just be aware of. But once you get the hang of it, I think it becomes a bit of a non-issue. But for those of you that might be looking for just like ultimate halo perfect knife in every way, I think that's one point of improvement that they potentially could do, especially considering that they do make you know, good pocket clips, even milled pocket clips. And then I think, let me see, I've got a few actually. Let me, right off camera here, right underneath the tripod, I actually do have another. This one is zirconium. This is their full size. So, whoa, sorry about that. So it's a bit thicker than the slim model, and then it also, instead of having the milled clip, it has a bent spring clip, and you can see a little bit more ramp there. So versus the ramp that's here. So it would be nice to see something a little bit, I mean, obviously this is going to be a lot sleeker. This is going to be coming out a little bit more, but I think that in terms of the aesthetic, if you did have something with just a little bit more ramp in there, it would help out from that standpoint, and it would turn it from being a, you know, I guess it's a non-issue, but it could be even less of a non-issue, and really it could be kind of a plus to have something like that, because it is really well executed. It almost has that wire clip style look, and the nice thing is, because it does have that hollow area here in the center, it does allow you to view that great texturing. And then another thing to note about the texturing is the edges here, guys. Look at the finishing on these edges, nice and round. Also, you're getting a bit of extra contouring here, so that when your finger it comes down, it actually isn't hitting anything harsh. So very thoughtful from that standpoint, and quite ergonomic. You can see nice and rounded all the way, nicely centered. You do have that nice inset lock there. I guess maybe you could call it a liner lock, although it's not a full liner there. And you can also see that it's quite pocketed in terms of, you know, making effort to keep this nice and light. So yeah, this thing is very, very sweet. In terms of model variations, I mean, this is it. I know that they have for a few runs, because they do small runs of these, played around with different metals, but XHP is still the default as far as I know, and it's doing a great job for what it does. From that standpoint, it's you know, I really have no complaints. In terms of comparable options out there really aren't a ton of, you know, things I consider competition in that USA made category, especially with this level of in-house production. But, you know, you could always compare it to kind of a small Chris Reeve Knives Sebenza as a benchmark, and I think it holds up really, really well. Of course, it's a much different type of knife, whether you be thinking about the way that it deploys, or the locking system, and or even the state that it's produced in, right? Texas versus Idaho. But I think this thing does a great job, and I really like it. I still carry my small Sebenza a lot, but I also carry this a lot. And, you know, just like my watches, I go through quite a few different rotations, and this one always finds a way every week into my pocket. So that's big props to, of course, Tactile Knife Company for designing something out of the gates that is just this competitive, this strong, this well done. It's really, really quite nice. And then, so guys, I guess if I was to come up with a bottom line here, in typical Tactile fashion, you know, they somehow find a way to make a $300 knife feel like a deal. And that's special, guys. I mean, they make a $100 pen feel like you're getting a deal. They make a $300 knife feel like, wow, I'm getting a lot. I'm getting XHP blade steel. I'm getting fully in-house USA produced and assembled, USA designed. I mean, there's just so many great features on this knife, and it doesn't feel like some super, I mean, in the right ways it feels expensive, but it doesn't feel overly so, and it definitely doesn't feel like a safe queen. This is absolutely a user knife. This is one that I'm not at all timid about utilizing and cutting with. So that's another great feature. Is just that, again, it ties into the Tactile Turn and the Tactile Knife Company, just that shared DNA in that it's a user. Ultimately, these things are made to be used at the end of the day. So whether it be cutting or writing, you do get a great tactile connection in terms of the way that you interact, in terms of ergonomics in your grasp, as well as just your use case as you're going to use these, throughout the day. They just work. So guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do hit like. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.